Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have Doug Casey with me once again. Now, if you're a gold-oriented investor, you already know who Doug is. He has had a remarkable track record as an author, investor, and speaker, and a more complete bio is available on this show's webpage, Voice America Business Channel. But suffice it to say that you are in for a real treat over the next 20 minutes or so in listening to what Doug has to say. He's always an entertaining speaker, and he also brings with him a great deal of experience and wisdom. So thank you so much for joining me, Doug.
Thanks, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm speaking to you from the backward but pleasant little country of Uruguay at the moment.
Are you in the mountains? Is it
No, I'm at the beach, actually.
Oh, at the beach. Okay, but you're
on a farm near the beach.
And I think you said you're there with horses and cows and dogs and cats, and a few of the people that help you and work with you there. Mm. So you like I mean, your place in Cafayate in Argentina is kind of an isolated place too. You enjoy being sort of isolated from all of the riffraff, or what is it, Doug? I mean, you like to be where you feel safe. I know you're a great reader. You're a great intellectual, so you like to think and read and so forth. So I guess for you, living in a place where you don't have hundreds and thousands of people crowded around you is a delight, I suppose.
Well, look, I'm very happy being alone with a bunch of books and the internet. I don't need to be surrounded by millions of people. And of course, this recent hysteria about the virus has underlined the fact that having millions of people around you can be a risk, can be a danger. Although I hasten to add that the virus is 95% hysteria.
Wow, that's quite a statement, because we're inundated with this need to make sure that we don't leave our houses and we stay put, and how serious it is and how it's going to wipe out humanity if we're not careful. Tell me why all this stuff I'm hearing is wrong.
Okay, look, in the last 20 years, we've had swine flu, we've had bird flu, we've had HIV. We've had a number of other things besides. Viruses come and go. They reach a peak and then they go away. Now, the most serious thing in the way of a pandemic that we've had for over 100 years was the Spanish flu in 1918 and 1919. Mm-hmm. It's said that it killed about 600,000 Americans, okay? That would be roughly the equivalent of 1.8 million Americans dying today. Mm-hmm. Even though that happened, during the time it happened, there was a minor recession in the country, mostly due to the demobilization from World War I and the distortions that adventure created. Mm-hmm. And life went on. So today, with a much more advanced knowledge of medicine, this is a big nothing burger. Okay, so the number of people that are going to die, it's unfortunate. But as what's happened in Italy, the average age of people that are said to have died from the coronavirus in Italy is about 80. So if you're not really old and not really sick, you're probably pretty safe. But in just the normal seasonal flu, like 0.1% of the people that get it die. Mm-hmm. So this is hysteria. This is actually looked at from a historical point of view. The only thing I can think of that's comparable to this is the 17th century witch hysteria. I mean, it's actually that insane that the entire economy of the world is being collapsed just on another flu virus. More serious than most, I'm sure, but just another one. So no, I discount it heavily. And I'm not here in the middle of nowhere on a farm hiding from the flu. I'm here because I'd be here anyway, and I enjoy it. So that's where I stand on.
All right. Well, that's very interesting, and I think it ties in very well with what I wanted to talk to you today about the fourth turning. So back in 1918, you didn't have the government doing what the government's doing today. Do you think that has something to do with the place that America is right now in that fourth turning? And maybe before you answer that, give our listeners a little bit of an overview, those that haven't read the book, what the fourth turning is all about.
Well, it's not my book. It was done by Howe and Strauss, but it's an excellent book. And I recommend that people read not only the fourth turning, but the book that they wrote before that called Generations. And basically, it's a generational theory of history. It's well known that generations tend to go from being liberal to conservative to back to liberal again and so forth. Okay, that's all true. But what they've done is they figured out that there are actually four generational types. And I don't want to go into that so much because it's their theory, not mine. I think it's a correct theory, basically. But the way I want to put what's going on today into context is that Western civilization itself, I think, peaked just before World War I. In other words, it peaked in about 1914. And it's been going downhill since then. All the values that made the West as great as it is are being washed away at an accelerating rate. And every time there's a major crisis, financial, political, what have you. Now, in this case, medical, or I'd say faux medical, it gives the government more of an opportunity to grasp power. The kind of people that go into government are the kind of people that aren't so interested in controlling physical reality as they are controlling other people. So this is a wonderful thing from the point of view of the kind of people that go into government. A disaster from the point of view of the average guy, traditional Americans. But this is really serious. The flu's not the serious thing. It's the knock-on effects of the flu. The business collapse that's happening as a result of the hysteria, and even more important than those second-order effects are the third-order effects, which are what the government's doing. They're going to set up new agencies, there are going to be new taxes, new regulations. Listen, I wouldn't doubt that they're going to say that everybody has to be vaccinated when they come up with some kind of a flu vaccination. And if you're not, you can't fly and God knows what else. The possibilities are endless.
Yeah, that's what's appealing to those that are seeking power, for sure. But then I'm wondering if the American people then at this stage in history are more susceptible than they would have been in 1913, 1914, that time frame. Earlier than that, of course, it was 1913, thereabouts the time when we had the Fed. The Fed was created to protect who? To protect J.P. Morgan. But the idea was to protect all of us, right? And the IRS was there to help us as well, supposedly. I mean, that's how it was sold to us.
Sure, they're all lies. Look, back then, Americans were much more independent. Freedom was much more of a real concept. And these things have become very, very degraded over time, where the government has gone from being just a distant power that was in Washington and did some things from time to time, like start the war between the states, where now it's an overweening influence in every aspect of our lives. It's the average American views the government as a cornucopia, where everything comes from. Money, food, orders, leadership, everything. This is a very disturbing trend. I don't know how it's going to end, but it's going to end badly.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty incredible when you think about it. The idea that government has endless amounts of resources. They believe it. I mean, our universities are not teaching people anything to do with economics. Any economics, it's all Marxist stuff, right? I mean, it's easy to understand how we have an AOC here, not far from where I live here in Queens. They've all been educated along those lines.
You're absolutely correct. The cultural Marxists have long since taken over the education system in the U.S., especially the universities, but even the high schools and the grade schools. And kids go to school and they're indoctrinated with all of these poisonous ideas. So it's only natural that when they get out into the world, they believe the things that they were taught by authority figures. And their parents believe the same things because they were taught the same things. So, I think the battle, I hate to sound defeatist, but frankly, the good guys have lost. And it's a real pity. And compounding this is what's happened in the financial markets, where since the last crisis, of 2008 to 2010, was kind of solved by printing up trillions and trillions of currency units, creating a bubble in stocks, a hyper bubble in bonds, reinflating the bubble in real estate. And now the average guy is very involved in all these things. And he's going to be washed away financially. And so what's he going to do? Well, he's going to look to the government to bail him out and to kiss everything and make it better. So look, there's almost no way out of this conundrum at this point. It's very bad news. I'm sorry to sound so gloomy, Jay.
Well, it is the truth. I have no doubt about that. And in an interview that you did recently, you noted that Machiavelli had figured this out centuries ago, in fact, and yet we don't learn, do we? What is it with the human race that we can't learn from history? I mean, the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And yet that's what we're doing. I mean, just talk about the financial situation, about the Federal Reserve. Every cycle they print more money and we just dig ourselves deeper into a hole. And now we have negative interest rates and God knows what's going to happen. That is just like trying to fool Mother Nature with negative interest rates. It's just it's insane. How can we have capitalism if we're not allowed to price capital? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, we don't have capitalism to start with. We actually have what's technically known as fascism, where there is private ownership of both capital goods and consumer goods, but the government regulates and controls it all. So no, we don't have capitalism. It's a mistake to confuse what we have with capitalism.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter which party's in power. They're both sold out to this to this scam.
Oh, it's
endemic.
It is. It's a mass dramatization of psychological aberrations that are common to humans. I mean, increasingly, I'm starting to view my fellow humans as a bunch of chimpanzees gathered around a watering hole, and it's really easy to get them hooting and panting. I just hope we don't make the Chinese into our new enemy. Seems like things are lining up that way, actually. Yeah. But when things get bad domestically, governments like to find a foreign enemy to blame it all on. And this virus is perhaps as good an excuse as any. I'm sure that a lot of people in the U.S. military right now are thinking pretty much the way the Russian military thought back in the mid-'80s. Gee, if we don't strike now, we may be too late to strike soon and certain to lose the war. So that's why we came so close to World War III back in the 80s when the Soviet Union was on the point of falling apart. And at this point, the bloated U.S. military and the and the U.S. state generally is, it's possible we can have a war, but I think World War III, wars have not been abolished, is likely to have a very, very big biological element. In other words, why use nuclear weapons or things like B-2s and F-35s and M1 tanks? This stuff is all junk, just expensive junk. When a virus, I'm not saying this virus, the virus is what's going on, but when the war comes, it'll definitely have a biological nature. It's cheap. It has plausible deniability. It can be directed genetically towards certain groups. It leaves all the capital standing. You don't have to blow it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got all kinds of advantages. So that's, of course, what they're going to do. And of course, the U.S. government has been working on biological weapons for decades. And you can rest assured that other countries have too.
Right, for sure. Well, but how? Okay, so maybe that's a cheaper way too. I mean, I was going to ask you, what about the ability to finance this? And I mean, as long as the rest of the world is willing to accept dollars, but I think there's signs, Doug, that right now there's less of a tendency for American or for foreigners. I mean, Alistair McLeod's been talking about how the net export countries are not recycling their dollars back into treasuries at the very time when the U.S. Treasury needs are greater than ever, when the borrowing is going just absolutely berserk and exponential, and yet foreigners aren't coming in, so there's nobody left but the Fed to print. Who's going to buy anyway? Who wants to buy treasuries at zero interest rates? So how do we finance something like that? I mean, the war is to be financeable. I guess maybe that's another reason for biological weapons. It might be a lot cheaper than, as you say, you leave the capital intact, right? So,
yeah, that's right. But it's a real problem that the U.S. government has come up against with the dollar. It's that they're spending trillions now. I mean, trillions. The deficit isn't just going to be $1 trillion, not $2 trillion.
No.
It's going to be 3 or 4 trillion. And as the depression, and we have started on a depression incidentally, gets worse, they're going to spend more money and they're going to have less income from taxes. So the only way they can get money is by selling it to the Federal Reserve, which credits their accounts at commercial banks. Then the government dispenses it as it wishes. So this is going to devastate the average American who's on a fixed pension in dollars, people that have savings in dollars, people that are in the stock market, because I think the stock market's got a long way to fall. But the real hyper bubble, the real danger, is in the bond market.
For sure.
I mean, we're head over heels in debt, and that debt's going to be defaulted on directly or indirectly. And that's a real problem for the people that own the debt. In other words, people that own treasury bills and other kinds of bonds. Jesus, in an urbanized society, such as we have now, where everything is just in time, if you don't have capital and you don't have savings, everything could come unglued.
Very rapidly, and then you're totally dependent on the government. Well, let me ask you, Doug, with just about 3 minutes left here or so, can the dollar remain as the world's reserve currency, and what's going to take its place if it can't remain?
No, the dollar is on its way out rapidly. It's no longer going to be the world's currency. The Chinese and the Russians in particular have been big gold buyers. Why? They have, even when the Chinese trade with the Russians, they have to use dollars because they don't trust the yuan or the ruble between themselves. They use dollars. But all those dollars have to clear through New York and settle in the U.S., even between these two countries that are big adversaries of ours. So what's happening is you're going to find in the future a gold-backed ruble, a gold-backed yuan, but all the world is going to go back to gold because none of them trust each other's funny money currencies. No, the dollar is on its way out. So the answer to the question is the only thing that really makes sense for the average guy or the guy with a lot of money is to buy gold today. Buy gold coins. And right now, as a speculation, gold stocks are superb. They're a lot of money. All these fund managers are going to pile into them. We're going to get a bubble in gold stocks next. I'm convinced of it.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. We're hearing stories right now, Doug, though, that it's very difficult to take delivery of gold. A lot of the buyers are having trouble. What do you make of that? And how much good is gold going to be to us? If everything around us, if we can't buy food, if we can't buy items, and things that we have to have for life itself.
Well, gold is the only financial asset that is not simultaneously somebody else's liability. And that's very important in a time when you can't trust the currency. As far as having food and other things that you want, look, even in countries with crappy currencies where the economy is collapsing, like Venezuela, or in particular right across the Plate River from where I am in Argentina, where I spend a lot of time, life still goes on, but it's going to turn out that the people that have gold in the future are going to have real wealth that they're going to be able to trade for whatever kind of new currency the government comes up with. And incidentally, since the 1930s, when both Argentina and Brazil had gold standards and had gold coins circulating among the population, since then, both of them have had about 5 or 6 different currencies that have been destroyed in sequence. But life goes on. So
yeah, life goes on. All right.
It may be a police state, but life will go on.
Life goes on. All right. Well, Doug, for people that, most people know who you are, but how can they follow what you're doing? They get on a mailing list?
Well, thank you, Jay. I always appreciate a commercial of that type. They should go to internationalman.com.
Okay.
We have it's a free newsletter that comes out daily, and the articles are really excellent.
They are excellent.
Yeah, they're very different from all kinds of things. So go to internationalman.com. And I would also urge people, since I'm finishing the 3rd book in my septet of novels, go to Amazon and get a copy of Speculator and Drug Lord, the first 2 novels in the series. I'm completing Assassin as we speak.
All right. Look forward to it. When you finish it, we'll have you on again to talk about that, Doug. Thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your very unique views. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much.